As this goes on, there really is a worry, isn't there, whether all the information's coming to light. That shocking incident I'm thinking about the other day when the company running the plant, TEPCO, mistakenly reported radiation levels 10 million times more than normal, all the panic that caused. Can we believe anything we've been hearing so far?
Well, we can. What's happening now, of course, that TEPCO are beginning to take control of the site, at last, I would add, you know, a week at least after they should have, and we're now beginning to learn how serious this incident is in terms of the amount of radiation that's actually creeping out those 3 reactors and that spent fuel pond that detonated. So we're now getting a sense of how much radiation is in the reactor plants and how much is actually creeping out onto the general site of Fukushima and then going into the actual marine environment. That's the real concern. Have we seen the end of this release? And are we now seeing the dispersal into the environment, or are there more releases to come?
So why was TEPCO so tired, do you think, in trying to deal with this? And does that add to the increasing talk tonight that Japan may want to nationalise the company? Should this have been done beforehand?
Well, the problem is really the fundamental nuclear safety culture in Japan and generally in the rest of the developed world is flawed. What happened here is that the Japanese considered this cascade from earthquake through to tsunami could never happen, or would happen so infrequently that they didn't have to take account of it. And as a result, they never practiced this, never rehearsed for this type of accident. And we can see effectively that the Japanese, for the first 2 weeks, have been running around, to coin an old English phrase, like headless chickens, not knowing what to do. The real problem is this: if they take a measure like flooding and quenching the reactors with water, that may well lead to serious consequences later on when they have all that accumulated water on site, which is highly radioactive. Then they have to make a decision of how to deal with the water, whether to keep it in sight in bung trenches or to actually discharge it to sea, with the consequences on the marine environment. So whichever way they've turned, they've been ill prepared and they poorly planned for the consequences of their succeeding actions.
So 3 weeks into this unfolding disaster, this unfolding situation, are we any closer to it being sorted out, or is the situation in fact getting worse?
What is happening is it's taking a different turn virtually every day. Now the two of the 3 reactors that exploded are seemingly under control, but are still generating tremendous amounts of heat. Number 1 reactor still has a certain amount of instability in it, and then you've got the awful problem, the radiological problem, of actually controlling the fuel pond that went wrong. But the problem is, for these technicians to get in to actually mitigate, to try and stop this ongoing situation, they have to go in right into the plant, into the turbine halls, which have now become heavily contaminated with the radioactive water, the water that they use copiously to quench the reactors.
Which I guess
That's now proven a problem.
Which I guess could have been foreseen in the first place, couldn't it? We had a professor on earlier on tonight saying now the situation is as bad as Chernobyl. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's different. It's quite different to Chernobyl. Look, there's much more radioactive material at risk here than at Chernobyl. This has involved 3 reactors. Chernobyl was a single reactor. This has involved reactors that were closed down, but nevertheless have violently exploded in their own way. Chernobyl was a single reactor. Its release took over 6 days. There were very heavy actions taken by the Soviets at the time to try and control the situation in an ordered way. Here we have disorder and chaos.
We've recently been witnessing a number of major accidents which greatly damaged the environment of people's health. I'm thinking about the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Now we've got this nuclear crisis in Japan. A question for you. Is technological progress going beyond what people can realistically control? What are your thoughts about that?
When you talk about hazardous plants like this, what happens is the designer and then subsequently the operator, and in this case the nuclear regulator, has to be absolutely sure that they can foresee all of the risks, the type of risks and the frequency, particularly the frequency at which those risks are likely to occur. So in other words, if the operator of the Fukushima plant said the risk of an earthquake and a tsunami of this size was 1 in 10 million years, then the regulator would have said, that's okay, that's such an incredible accident. That's rather like saying that tiny speck of ice in the enormous geographical area of the North Atlantic Sea would never hit that ship. So therefore, because it was such a remote occurrence, You could ignore it. You didn't have to make the Titanic unsinkable, nor did you have to fit it with life rafts. That's the problem. It's turning a blind eye to the obvious.
John Large, independent nuclear consultant, thanks for being on RT tonight, getting your insights. Appreciated.